All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to this month's episode of Wheel Tapping, July 2020. Who knows where we're going to be at this point in our lives with lockdown and everything, but the show must go on. We must continue. And today's title has been played a lot by my friend Tony and I online. So let me bring on the second half of the show. Mr. Fryer, how you doing today?
Hello, Mr. Chris. Doing quite well, actually, over here.
Quite well. Well, I'll take quite well. That's definitely preferable to a lot of the other things that it could be, right?
I need to get my COVID haircut, but other than that, we're good.
All right. Well, you have one extreme or the other. I have the clippers. I was the guy who bought the clippers and just went to town on the deck one day, and all taken care of. But nice. So one of the things, we got a lot of plays in online of 24. Thank goodness, because this was a great title for us to talk about. I'm super excited that we kind of chose this one to do. So, yeah. You know what? Without further ado, Tony, let's, people can read the podcast notes, so they probably already know that we have the designer, Mr. Lonny Orlger himself, joining us today to talk about 1824. So welcome, Lonny. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, outstanding. Trust me, we are always super, super excited when we get the designer, because we learn things. Like there are things that come out of these games that we just don't always understand, and then we learn a little reason. And, this is where the theme for the 18xx genre comes from. So it's exciting to be able to bring that home when people just think it's a train game, right? So yes. It's outstanding. So we are talking about 1824, initially published in 2005. Believe that was by Lonny and Double O originally, and then it saw re-release last year through the Kickstarter through Fox in the Box, which got a really nice reprinting, right?
Oh yes,
right.
Love it. Did you, while we're getting into this, was there a big change in the actual game itself between version 1 and the Kickstarter version?
No, there was no change, or one change, a minor change in the share price index. I eliminated 2 or 3 columns on the left side.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Because
I always wondered that.
Weren't needed.
When you have a chance to go back, if you have a chance to go back and revisit something, how tempting is it to say mess with it? But you probably did a ton of play testing, so I think you took care of that.
Yes, but I added some features, the 2 and 3 player map and the goods variant.
Yes,
so these things are new.
Excellent
compared to the old version.
Well, I'll take it. So, because, you proved it with CZ, and, maybe we'll have to have you back on to talk about that at a future time. But,
Sure.
The smaller, tighter games, I think, you do really well, and that's not easily done, I think, in 18xx. So finishing this up, it plays 2 to 6 players, as we just said. Now it didn't initially, and it takes about 4 to 5 hours. We played a 4-player game in 4.5 just the other day, so I find that very accurate. Tony has a bunch of plays of this guy. I think we need to update this, since I think you played it since you sent me this list, even. So I think you have 19 plays now.
No, it's 18. I knew we were going to play, so I just made the sheet say. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yesterday was my 18th play.
Yeah, and I think I'm setting it half a dozen, which seems to be about normal for when we talk about reviews. Like if I can get 5 or 6 plays in, I consider myself happy. So there is that. So awesome. I think that's the game. Tony, do you have any questions before we get started?
Well, I definitely have a lot of questions for Lonny, for sure. Is that what we're getting started on next, or?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go into, so normally we call this the private auction, but there's no privates. So we're going to call this the initial auction. Well, the mountains.
There's also no auction in 1824.
Well, it's
just
kind
a
of.
sale.
Yes.
It is just a sale, right? There's
right,
definitely
that's right.
nobody sitting up there
Yeah.
going. So
I can tell you something about auctions. The auction private is a method from the designer to put the responsibility, how much value is a private paper to the players. So, was this right? Did you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
I can easily invent a lot of private papers and put them to auction, and I don't have to think about the value of each paper. But the players don't have the knowledge how much a private paper is worth until they have played it several times. So I'm not satisfied with this. I like it more if you just choose a paper like in 1824, and they should be all worth the same.
No, I agree,
More or
and
less.
it's really funny because no matter what player counts we've played it at, these the initial sale, we'll call it, has gone differently every single time. Like it's really interesting because I feel like you can make a plan and a decision a lot quicker too. You know, an auction, that plan is flexible and moving, and oh, I'll get this private and I'll open up that major, and then that private goes for more than you're willing to pay, and then now you have to shift that plan. Whereas here, I feel that, you know, when it's your turn, you have an opportunity to stake a claim and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Now you might have to react, sure, but I think ultimately, I think it's a big plus. So
Yes.
there we go. So we'll talk about the auction now. Then, you know, we'll get it out of the way now, or lack thereof. I think that's completely fine. So
Right on. Well, I definitely have something to say about it later on too. So.
I'm sure you do.
Okay.
Mr. Orgler, could you just tell a little bit about yourself to people? Like, what do you do for a living? Where in the world are you living? You know, all those things.
I live in Austria, a beautiful country, famous for skiing and Mozart. I live a little bit south of its capital, Vienna, and I'm a teacher for handicapped children, for very handicapped children. They can't speak, they can't move, they can't eat. So
Wow.
what I do is more therapeutical things than really teaching. I have no blackboard or I have no tables in my classroom, but what I teach is to sharpen their senses. I have a lot of materials for seeing, for hearing, for touching.
Interesting.
Yep.
Wow, that is interesting. Wow, it's got to be a tough job, but a rewarding job, I would think.
Yes, and I love it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing it.
No worries.
It's
I like
important,
it.
man.
I think.
Certainly.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I wanted to tell that I'm now married and have 2 children, 6 and 3 years old, and they change everything in life.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is, the less time I have, the more creative I am to develop games. Before I had children and before I was married, I had a lot of time, but it was too much time. Nothing went on. And now I have to take every spare hour I get, especially in the evenings when the children sleep, and I use it. And don't do silly things like watching TV or something else.
Interesting.
You're
To
more
kill the
efficient
time.
now.
Yes, right. That's the
Yes.
word.
I hope that a year or two from now, when I watch this video again, that COVID-19 is solved, and
I hope to, yeah.
and that this question won't make much sense. But how are things for you guys there in Austria recently with all this?
Also we had a shutdown too from March 15th on. So my school was closed too, and I had to stay at home. But I did a lot of stuff over the internet. As I created songs and made videos for my children so that the people there could show them. That was my teaching life, and all the time the children were at home all the time because kindergarten was closed too, and I was busy.
For sure.
But in Austria we have only 400 cases left, so it looks like the pandemic is over, hopefully. So everything, life goes on again.
Don't come here for about a year.
Reopened.
Just stay away.
Yeah, I read the figures for all countries. Yeah, it's not good in the US and in Brazil and the UK. So we will see.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that you guys are all healthy and well and getting through it. Lonny, I know because we've talked once before. I know some of the answers to this question. It's like, what do you do for fun? And I know you do some acting. You mentioned making some songs. Can you talk about what you do for fun?
I like to be creative. So, yes, I'm a member of an amateur stage group for 25 years now. And yeah, I did a lot of acting and loved it. I tried to be a stand-up comedian. I made my own program, but wasn't very successful.
Oh.
No, yeah, I broke it up because I took a year off and made a journey around the world for 1 year. That was in 2009 and 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice walkabout.
Yeah, I came to the US too.
Awesome. Right on.
Yeah, I love to travel a lot. Before I got children, I traveled
for the children
a lot. Yeah, well, I went with the Trans-Siberian Railway from Moscow to Beijing.
Oh wow, that sounds fun.
That would be awesome.
It is. It takes 6 days.
It must have been a big adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
it was a big adventure. Yeah.
Awesome.
I took a break in Irkutsk for one night. Yeah, I will never come there again, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Funny. That's too bad about the stand-up comedy. That would have been cool.
Yeah. Did you do any of the big train rides in the US when you were over here? Because we have a couple.
No. Yes, I never used the train in the US. I had a Greyhound ticket, and
sorry,
I could. Sorry, I got a 30-day Greyhound pass, which made I could use the Greyhound.
Oh, go anywhere, anytime. Oh, that's smart.
Yes.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah. That was when I was young and a student and had no money. I slept in the Greyhound overnight and went to the next city. Like this.
Nice.
Well, if you try the comedy career again, I think the problem could have been that your material was all about 18xx jokes, and that probably didn't go over so.
No, I just needed more audience.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have been successful if I would put more energy into it, but it's okay. But it was all in German, so I like to play with the language, with the German language, but my English is not good enough to really make language fun or something like that.
You sound fine to us, buddy.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You talked about your creative outlets and stuff, and how did designing 18xx games become one of your creative outlets?
Okay, I love to play all my life. I started with Monopoly when I was 6 years old, and I always wanted to build my own game. So I started to build my own Monopoly game board. And
Nice.
yeah, then my first 18xx was 1835, Germany. And then I thought I can do a bigger one. And because I live in Austria and we had this huge empire, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, I just draw a map and invented 1837.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was young and the rules weren't really the best ones. So a lot of people found mistakes in the rules. I learned from it.
That's fair.
In my local group, there are several of us that have a copy of 1837. Yes. And we do play it.
Yeah,
we do play it.
I know a lot of people. Actually, I never played it since I published it.
Yeah.
So
you're moving on to other things.
Yes. So I have no idea how it will work, but I would love to learn it again.
Did 1837 play a role in 1824 come into life, or is it just really a coincidence that it's the same general area?
No, Helmut Ole, the co-author of 1824, came to me one day and said he would like to make a new 1837 with a smaller map with less companies. So that was the reason. But it showed the same country, Austrian-Hungarian Empire, but we made a smaller map and less companies and some new rules.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. What is so on my 1824 box? It says Lonny.
Yeah.
Lonny, over here somewhere. And there's a little bomb in there. What's the bomb on the O?
This should be the label of my company. I invented a one-man company 3 years ago. And I invented the label 10 years ago, and I just use it. But for my new game, 1840, I use a new logo, not this anymore. And the bomb was just fun. And you can see I make bombastic games.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, I enjoy your titles. And in America, we have a slang where they're the bomb. That means they're good.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
I just didn't know if you did that because you like to mess with people and throw a bomb in the middle of their situation.
No.
Nothing quite so fancy.
I'm a very peaceful person.
Yes. Awesome. Just one more silly question is
Sure.
you kind of mentioned when I was asking about the COVID stuff, it sounds like Austrian restaurants are beginning to reopen. What is your favorite meal when you get a chance to go out?
My favorite meal is called Kartoffelgulasch in German. You know the word goulash?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know the first half of that word you said, though.
The first half is a potato.
Oh.
The potato goulash. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yum.
Potato mixed with sausage pieces in a nice sauce. I love that.
It sounds hearty and delicious.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to look that one up. So, because I'm kind of a chef by trade, so that's
okay.
Whenever I hear interesting, foods and variants, I'm also German by birth, so give me some meat and potatoes. I'm,
really?
very very happy. Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So any other questions, Tony? Or shall we
Not
head
from me,
on?
sir.
No,
Sure.
I think that was really good. The only other question I had was when you did 18CZ, didn't you actually like do that entire Kickstarter yourself? And what did you bring on Fox in the Box, or did they help you because it was too much, or how did that work out?
That was a funny coincidence. Fox in the Box is a one-man company like me. The owner is called David Hanacek. And he invented his company to bring complicated games into the Czech market. He just translated the rules into Czech.
Okay.
And he wanted to do a Czech version of an 18xx game. So I think he asked, I don't know who, some guy in the Americas. I think David Heck.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
David Hecht. Funny.
And he has heard that I'm working on a new game set in the Czech Republic. So David Hanacek wrote an email to me if he could publish it in Czech too, in the Czech version. And I said, yes, sure. And then we worked together because I was looking for a publisher because I had no experience with printing stuff and something like that. And so he did all that, and he had graphic guys to make this beautiful box design, and he made all the graphics of the game.
Yeah, I would say it was probably one of the those earlier, more attention paid to detail and graphic design games, right? Like I think that there are a few that kind of bridge that. 46 was one with GMT doing it, and I just remember the presentation being very, very good and professional. So that would explain why.
Yeah, he made the same mistake as it happened with 1844-54, where I know the graphic guy, because they want to make beautiful track tiles with real tracks, and a lot of people don't want it. So there was a discussion about this design, and the conclusion was that there is a Czech version of the game with a more with a very beautiful game board and track tiles, and the English-German version of the game.
I'm gonna have to look that up before there's a run on people trying to find that version now and drive the prices up. Well, I mean, I don't think it'll be any great secret. Tony and I like CZ as well. And I think we will revisit that at some point in the future. So I don't want to dive too deep into that. So we're gonna save that for another day, because I want to have something to come back to, Lonny. I think that's that's pretty cool. So real quick rundown, Tony. What are some of the cool MacGuffins in this game? What are some of the unique things that set it apart from other 18xx games that you think?
Yeah, sure. As Lonny was already talking, there's not an auction; it's a sale of all the different companies and things like that. There's a bunch of different kinds of companies. There's the mountain railways, which are kind of like privates. And they have a real nice little role in the game that we'll talk about. Obviously, there's mining companies. There's the pre-Staatsbahn companies. There's the regional companies. And the pre-Staatsbahn grow up into be the Staatsbahns, and these big national companies. There's a quite a lot of little differences in MacGuffins here that are quite interesting.
Absolutely. We'll get into it with the trains too, but there are definitely two types of trains with two completely different kind of use cases, and a parallel rust track, but it's not completely synchronized either. So which catches me out every time because I want that darn 5G when we get there, and I'm ready to buy it, but unfortunately, no one has made me able to. So there's that. Um, so, any other questions before we head into yellow phase? Any other thoughts, differences, cool things? Yeah, the initial auction. I mean, this game tells you right up front it's going to be different because it doesn't do the auction; it just does the sale. The nice thing is, even with 5 players, I still feel like you can get something. You can make a package happen. Like you can pick a couple things and sync up. Might not be your first choice, but you know, the initial purchase round is a snake round. So even if you are last, you know, and that happened to me when we played the other day. It's even though I was last, I was able to do a 1-2 and give myself a very good position in one of the smaller companies, which was nice. Well, if we have nothing further, let's bring on the yellow phase. Now, the yellow phase is all about the stock market and the map. So, Tony, let's just get the stock market out of the way here. Now, you did mention that it's a little more narrow this time, but it's a very friendly stock market. The ledges are easy to get to. I don't think you get beat up so much for people selling your stuff. So I don't think there's a ton of, stock manipulation, trashing people, moving things around. So it's a very, you get rewarded for progressing. You don't get crushed if you don't. And I think, that's, one of the nice things I like about this one. We see Tony described it as pretty gentle. And I think that's fair.
But one thing, the difference in the columns is 10. So it's quite a little bit. In my newer games, I just use a difference of 5 of the currency. So that selling shares won't cause so much loss of value.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
It's also it's pretty easy. I don't want to say easy, but I think it's very attainable to get your companies into the larger than 10 jumps. Well, you think that zone is not too far off of the initial opening auction. So, you can start to make some 15 jumps and bigger jumps like that by mid game. I think definitely by Browns, if not earlier.
Lonny, do you like games like 1830 with a more volatile stock market? Was this sounds like a decision, right? Like you guys wanted to have a more steady market.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this destroying share value by selling shares because it's a kind of kingmaker job, depending of whom I sell shares or not. So the one sentence I say about 1830 is, you can't win this game, you can only lose it.
I like that. I like that. Cool. Right on.
Yeah.
I like games in both. I don't care if the stock market is gentle or difficult.
2 weeks ago, I played Sicily, 1849, I think. And they have really a brutal stock market there. And I didn't realize, so I lost it. Because you have to sell your shares and buy it back in the next round at a much cheaper price, and that pushes you forward. If you know this, it's fun. So I like all kind of stuff.
Awesome.
That always seems very counter to me, to sell shares in company. I struggle with it because if you even can't buy them back, then you tend to lose a lot of value because they get expensive.
Right. Yes.
I know. Well, I see you got the map up there, Chris, and
I do. That's the second half of our conversation. The stock market, I think, is pretty straightforward, but I think we need to move into the map
Yeah.
Okay.
because this is a huge part of the game. Sometimes maps are just places where we put tiles, right? Like, maybe you have some predetermined starting places starting for you. But with this map, it's very important because it's all about synergy. There are 4 mines sprinkled throughout the map. We got a 1, a 2, a 3, and then mine 4. So people are vying for those during that initial sale. And where you set up will generally determine the major that you want to run, because it's going to make sense to build your own track and build yourself up. The other thing is the pre-Staatsbahn companies, which, again, not all these things have to open. In our game the other day, pre-Staatsbahn here for the orange companies, R2 and 3 didn't even open. Nobody bought them in a 4-player game. So it's interesting how that dynamic plays into things. But each one of these are basically small minor companies that you are running that are getting trains. And then at predetermined times, they will, kind of like the bombs that went off in the Back to the Future 3 train when it was speeding towards the time and they were timed to go off. These will slot in and grow up at specific times and phases during the game. So if you get the orange ones, you have to run them all the way out until phase 6, 7. I think 7. So you have to really hold on to them and be able to manage them for a very long time, whereas the other companies form a lot earlier. So it's also very interesting how those work. So that generally you're starting either mines or you're starting one of these pre-Staatsbahn companies. Maybe you were brave and started the major, but I've only seen that happen one time. But he also just won the game doing that. So it's not a bad strategy.
The map of 37 and 24, I just find them to be very fun to lay tiles on and build my routes. These are very operational games, and the map is not boring at all. A couple things to point out, right? Obviously, Budapest and Vienna are right in the middle there. Those are the big money. But there's some of those red areas are very, very high too. And the little towns, right? The black dots. That eastern side of the board doesn't have so many of them, and the dots, the towns, are very important to the goods trains for the mine companies. And so maybe this is a good time to bring up that goods variant, the good times variant, because Lonny, we started playing with that. Oh, I don't know.
I've never not played with it.
Gotcha.
It's,
and we love it.
Relatively, yeah. It's simply you can just put more dots on the map board.
Boop, boop,
yeah,
boop. we'll just load up one area.
That people are using them mostly to put down in the lower right there, so that mine number 4 has more dots. But we also find them getting placed in other places to trip things up, like just northwest of the KK number 1. So add more doinks and try to hurt other companies and stuff like that. So we've seen those dots getting placed in lots of different ways, and just our local group, we've kind of made the decision of there's no reason to just never. We should always just play with the goods times variant. It's really fun.
I also think it really helps push the goods trains. The idea, and we'll get into this more with the trains variant, but companies can have both, and I think it makes sense. Especially when they grow up. I did that last night. I had the purple too, but because track went out to the east, it really made sense to buy a goods train because I made more money on that than I would have on a standard train. So you're like, it's just that I love that extra decision point, and the extra dits I've also seen them be used mean because you can make a couple double dip places which burn those tiles. Those tiles never upgrade. So if you really want to hem somebody in and say, "Oh, you want that company? Well, here's all these double dips. Now you are stuck because we're going to lay, jerky tile for you." So I've seen that happen too. Like we had that happen once or twice. Definitely recommend it. It's not the expert mode. It's not any of that. It's just makes the goods trains more valuable and helps. I think it infuses some cash into the game too, because it makes other companies want to get to mines even though they really don't need to. I think it helps kind of spread the board out a little bit. Like the way Vienna upgrades is very interesting because it never becomes through until it hits gray, and it becomes through for 3 cities in brown. But that's it. Like there's still one city that's kind of a single hole in Vienna by itself. Is there any historical reason for that, or was it just a balance issue?
No, it's a historical reason. In Vienna, we had a lot of end terminal stations. It was the capital of the empire and not a go through station.
Okay.
So we had a lot of terminal stations, and then they tried to connect them to, only in 2015 the Vienna main station was opened. Before that we had the west station, the south, the north. So now we have one main railway station in Vienna.
Interesting.
So the gray tile has been placed in real life.
Right.
Didn't think it would take that long.
Yeah. Any comments from you on the map, about anything that was fun or difficult or?
Well, something funny is that we just kicked out one column of hexes in the end stage of playtesting. So
just made it a little smaller.
The map was a little bit larger to the east, but we saw that the companies in the east were not so good, so we just kicked out a column of hexes.
Nice.
And made the map board a little bit tougher.
What has been your favorite player count to play this game with? Because I mean, if you can go all the way from 2 to 5, I imagine there's got to be one that you think is most comfortable and best. Or 6, sorry.
For this game, I think 3 and 4 players is very good. When I start to develop a game, I always think about 4 players.
Okay.
Makes sense. I mean, that's definitely the most common, right? Like that's right. Generally, and time-wise, we can get through a 4-player game in, 4 hours. It's very reasonable for something that has this much going on, because it's got a ton.
It's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So anything else on the map or anything specifically before we move on, Tony?
I'm good, sir.
All right, because we have kind of talked a little bit about it, and with the train roster, it's a big part of the game is the fact that there are 2 types of trains. There are goods trains, and then there are also passenger trains. And the goods trains are interesting because they can pick up dits for free. They're not counted as stops, but they also run to the mines. And the mines just generate income for the company, which is great because it keeps money flowing late in the game, which keeps the token game running really deep in this game. Like we're still tokening all the way out into the gray phase. We're still dropping tokens because there's still enough cash coming into a lot of companies running goods trains that it makes sense to do that. And I just absolutely love that. But Tony, why don't you talk a little bit more about what you like about the trains? Because I know you really enjoy them.
I think that the train roster and the way it works is my favorite so for me, the best train roster in any 18xx game, because Chris, like you talked about, there's the two trains, right? The goods trains and the passenger trains. And as you go through the passenger trains, that releases goods trains to the market. But passenger trains don't really rust goods trains and vice versa until you get to the big 10T, of course. But so you have this like independent rosters where one roster is triggered by the other roster. But then you have the train trade-in, where you can trade in a train to get the next biggest type. So there's a whole game around that. So if you don't get a 2 turned into a 3, then you're
not trading in that 2 or 4. No.
So there's games around that. Plus, like if you're constantly trading a 2 for a 3 for a 4 for a 5, it's costing you more money than it would just to be buying the 4. And so there's all these balances in that you have to play with. And of course, Lonny, at the end of a set, on top of all that, you export a train. So between exporting a train and players tempted with the trading in of trains, there's this pace to the train rush that I don't know, in my mind, it has a pressure, but it's not overwhelming. It doesn't take away from the focus of the game, because the focus of the game is running good companies, getting the right trains at the right times and stuff. But you're not, it's not like 1830 or 1857 where it's just like, living and dying on the trains. It's got this really super nice pressure without overwhelming the rest of the game. I really dig the roster. You guys did good, you and Helmet.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
what do you think about that roster?
Yeah.
How did it come to be? Or are there any comments about it?
With the difference with the two types of trains is an inheritage from 1837, and my idea was just to have two types of trains with different goals. The normal trains avoiding dots, and the goods trains trying to get all the dots. So that was the first intention, to have a discrepancy on the trains.
How about the trade-in? Like, when I first played 1824, going back a ways, that was like the first time I've ever played a game with the trade-in. I was like, yes. I don't think there's too many. I'm trying to think of one or two, but like Africa, you can.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how this idea developed, but yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah, that and the it's interesting because the exporting it just does a great job of keeping things moving to the point where we had 2 of the big phase changes happen the other day. I mean, in a seasoned 4-player game, 2 of the phase changes happen on the export. So it's very interesting to watch how that happens and how people work it out, because it's just, I like that extra little layer to the puzzle, right? And you're exporting them all the way. Like, it'll export a 10T and rust everything out that you've been running for the last 4 rounds. But, it doesn't just stop with the permanence or anything. I like that it continues to be a pressure even late in the game. And it makes you, one of the problems I kind of had with 89 is that you can have a permanent 4 train, right? Like, and I've even heard of a permanent 3, and it's like, that will not happen because it will get exported. And there's a need for you to constantly say, I need to work towards another train. So I love that pressure that Tony said. That's the perfect word. Perfect.
Sure.
Okay. To be honest, it was Helmut's idea. He first invented it for 1844 Switzerland.
Awesome.
Well, it's executed very well. So hopefully, I like to see more of it. But you know what? I've also found out from doing the show and playing more and more and more games, I really like operations. So this game tickles that little part of my brain. It's making me go, "Ooh, I like that," because it's very, very operational. I love that. Love it.
Awesome.
Cool. So the train roster, it is interesting. I was complaining earlier because it's the actual trains that unlock the goods trains. And
Yes.
I'm sitting there staring at, I believe it's an 8T and a 5G are both on deck and available. But
Oh.
I can't buy the 5G because it's not technically available until the first 8T is sold. So it was very frustrating. And then what happened, of course, what inevitably happened, somebody bought the AT and then all the 5Gs were gone and I never got to buy one. So it's just ripped right out of there. Because if you have a train that can run a 5G, chances are it is making money.
No, that's cool. You were in that position where your choice was buy the 8T, but you really wanted the 5G.
Right.
So you either had to move trains around and wait or just suck it up and buy the 8T. Yeah, it can make some good choices.
Yeah, and like you said, Lonnie, right? They're completely different runs. Like sometimes you have a company that has a good 8T run and a goods run. Like it could do both, but the company I had, I would have been underrunning an 8, or I'd just be picking up doinks with it, and that's just no fun. Nobody wants to pick up doinks with a diesel or an 8T. Like nobody wants to.
Sure.
Yeah. One key aspect with the trains is that with the first 4 train, the 3 G trains are available. And the 4 trains scrap all 2 trains, and the 3 G scrap all 1 G trains. So you can scrap a lot of trains by buying a 4 train and then a 3 G train.
Yeah, saw that happen too.
Yeah.
And
it's always fun when a lot of trains go off.
Yeah, like we didn't mention that about the mines, right? That the mines all come with a 1G. So correct, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The
So
companies.
they're running out of the gate and they're making money, but they only ever pay 50-50. So if you're not able to get into that 3G then or a 2G and get ready to springboard, I inevitably see a couple people get hosed because they could not get, and it may have been me once or twice, not gonna lie, I could not get into a train fast enough because it just moved way too quickly. It's tricky. But usually that 3-4 was bought by the first major company. I think the BH did that, if I'm not
Orange.
mistaken. Yeah. That was. I told you, Lonnie, I did not win the last time I played this. I mean,
Okay.
It was a comfortable last place, but. All right. The one thing we didn't mention is there are mountain companies in this game as well, and they kind of behave like almost like privates in the fact that they pay you money, just a flat $25 a round. But what they do is they allow you to get shares and open up the majors later on in the game. So, you know, that's the other one. And those are the typical, let me just pull it up. On the map, they're all of the shielded positions, right? So those companies, the SB, the CL, they can only be opened up by the mining companies that correspond with them. But it's interesting how that kind of plays off each other. Any thoughts on that before we get moving on?
I do. It's one of my brown phase notes, actually.
Well, then why don't we roll on into the brown phase? See, I do these segues and I don't even know it. I tell you.
No, you're just. It's a second, sixth sense.
It is. It also helps that I read the notes last night, for one. But we call this shenanigans. Lonnie, is there a term for, like, shenanigans are just like when you're up to nefarious little no good deeds that really benefit you and you alone? Do you kind of have, is there any kind of term like that in Austrian or German that you know of? That's not like this.
No. I just put it in the Google Translator, but it gives just a boring word.
That's too bad. There should be like a big German word like Farfignugan.
Yeah, there should be. It should be. I could see that because it's a lot of term crapped, into one little guy. So we call this shenanigans. So this is what are some of the levers? What are some of the buttons that you can pull that give you better position or kind of cause you angst in a game? That's what we kind of call shenanigans. So, Tony, I'm going to let you go right into the Mountain Railroad since I kind of opened that little Pandora's box for you. And I think we've talked about a few of the other ones. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, everything you said about those mountain railways is great, but like where you stopped and where we transitioned was where you could turn them into shares.
Right.
Because in this game, you can't buy more than 60% of a company, but you can acquire more than 60% by other means. And so like in these mountain railways are a good way to do that because I think it's when the 3 trains come up, it's optional for you to convert them into a share. Mm-hmm. But when I think it's the 4 train, right? Then it's mandatory that you convert them into a share. And so, people are trying to buy as many shares as they can and then convert, to have more shares. Of course, if you're going to have more shares of a company, you better make it a good company.
Yes.
I think they're really cool. I've seen mountain railways be used when people are being not careful to try to wrest control of a company from someone if they don't have enough shares in that company themselves. And
I think we saw that happen the other day, right? We saw somebody like dump 2 of their mountain companies into one company, and then at the very least, it made somebody have to defend, right?
That's right. That was Nick trying to take over the SB from me. And I barely had enough money to defend it. So that's a fun little shenanigan that those little mountain railways can give us for sure.
Yeah, and I love the way you did that. So, I mean, where did the idea for having them convert into shares, aside from just having them just pay out? Like, what was the thought process for that, Lonny?
Because everything is turned in a share. All the minor companies are turned into a share. So everything you buy in the initial share round is a share. So that was the thoughts behind that.
Interesting. So instead of just say selling in a private and then cashing it out, you're doing that, but instead of getting cash, you just get a share, and it's
right.
It kind of cleans up the back end of the privates and having to do that just as much as you cleaned it up with the auction when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I like that. But I like that it can also allow you to go up and over the 60%. But, that's also one of those things. When you play this, you want to watch that so that you don't let somebody do that, because chances are, like Tony said, it's going to be a well-running company, or the intention is to get a lot of cash into it so that they can, use it well. But
sure. Lonny, you mentioned initial sale there again. And that's kind of become a little bit of a shenanigan in our group. Because when I first started playing 1824, we would buy everything without fail. Everything was sold. But as we've been playing more, our outlook has changed. Our approach has changed. And sometimes the orange number 3 doesn't get sold. Last night, the orange number 3 and the number 2 didn't get sold. I think the purple number 2 didn't get sold one game. And so as we're becoming more experienced with the game, we're changing our approach to the initial auction or initial sale. Like last night when we played, I bought 2 mine companies and 1 mountain company, and I saved money, and I started the Bosnia-Herzegovina Railroad. So I mean, there's different ways to play that auction, and it's becoming more varied in our group. Have you seen that in your plays too?
No, I'm stuck in everything is bought in the initial stock round.
Oh, interesting.
But
Very cool.
yeah, I don't play it with the same people all the time. So I always play it with different people, so they don't have this experience. Because I agree, I seldom buy the orange minor companies. I don't think they are very strong.
Oh, interesting. Is that because they
Yeah.
start because it starts sooner and runs out of money sooner? Maybe.
Right. Yeah. They start with a 4 train, and they have to invest a lot of money in unsecured trains.
Yeah.
You know,
My favorite is
yeah. They also
no,
don't really have a
unsecured is the wrong
mine
word.
that helps them, right? Like, because they're stuck in that left corner, and it's the only corner on the map with no mine. Like, there needs to be a mine
Yes.
5, you know, just
No.
just to help Orange.
Sure.
I like mine.
1824 plus.
There you go.
Yeah.
But that's a tough corner to work in. I tried playing with it last night because there's an offboard 70 down there that's nice.
Yeah.
It's good, but
true,
it's
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, but it's not easy to get to. You got to get through some mountains. You got to build it up, and getting up north to Vienna and things like that is, and you know, it's always going to be more beneficial to do that. Totally.
You know, in last night's game, without orange number 2 and orange number 3, it had a big open area for the Bosnia Railroad to go into
Yeah.
without having to worry about orange tokens.
Right.
So
Okay,
it
yes.
made for some different play on the map.
Yeah, and the railroad that then formed out of the orange ended up going east. Didn't even bother with the whole west side. It just went totally to the east because it didn't have any tokens. It didn't have anything built down there. Why? You know, it didn't make sense for the SB to go that way, which was cool. Good stuff. So company dumping, you know, yeah. So this can happen. Did last night. I mean, my own fault. Let's be honest. But you know, I don't want to say it's hard or easy because you can move trains once you hit that phase. You can move trains between your mines and your full-grown companies, but that needs to make sense, right? The one game we played, I ended up, what was it, Tony? I dumped like over $1,000 into my mine company. I bought a train over because I had 2 vulnerable companies. And I'm like, well, I'm going to take the money where I know I will have it at some point. And then the other one I just dumped. I think I dumped that one on somebody. So it's fun because you can start moving trains and money pretty early in this game, even though you're only doing it with mines and with minor companies, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, Lonnie, do you guys see much dumping of a company onto another player in 1824?
Not very often, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Most of the players know that they don't buy a second share of a company, especially when I play with them, because I love to dump companies to other players.
I know better, but I still did it anyway.
Well,
Okay.
Maybe that conversation then is one of the things about 1824 is initially, until companies get going, there's not a lot to invest your money in.
True.
And so
Right.
sometimes, and when that the Bosnia-Herzegovina gets running, it's paying some money. So it's tempting to, what else am I going to buy?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that makes it a little bit risky, but yeah. And, we already talked about the stock market where, no matter how many shares you sell, it only goes down 1. So it's not about hurting the value.
Mm-hmm.
But, the only real negative effect of dumping a company is, if you're able to get some money out of it, is to make the new owner take a loan to buy a train. And and we see not every game has dumping that we play, and not every game has loans. Last night, I think we had 3 loans at three different times, which was a high. I don't think I've ever seen 3 loans. Because the game doesn't allow emergency funding, right? You got to take the loans and stuff. And our loans were small. They were a couple $300, so not
max.
big. I mean, they were good. They were tools. They weren't devastating. And you don't seem in 1824 to get into a downward spiral of loan interest, because the game is a little richer and stuff. And so I guess that's a long way to ask about, the loans. Do you guys see much loans? How do you guys feel about them? Should we take them more often?
I don't think so. It should be a little bit of punishment.
Yeah.
But not too strong so that the player can't play anymore.
Yeah, I feel that's kind of where they are too, because it's going to cost you some cash, but it's not putting you out of the game. Because, like Chris, early when you had that loan last night, you were far behind, but you totally closed the gap during the game.
Right. And didn't I took another one later too, I think.
Yes.
Because I created a small gap. I mean, it was a lot smaller the second time, even though the train was bigger because I had more cash. But, I think it's also one of those, because that you only drop once when you sell shares, you're a little more inclined to take the hit to buy the better train to try and get multiple trains running, as opposed to just running one permanent at the end of the game. You need to keep progressing your roster even to the end of the game. There are a lot of games where you don't need to get the diesel. You don't need to get, anything better than a 5. But this game really, it adds up, and those people will run for and outperform you big time. Even though I had one of the worst companies and one of the better companies, I was out earning everybody in the last set of ORs, which I thought was kind of like amazing. Like, given enough time, I might have been able to make it work, but not likely.
Nice. There's good tokens. Chris, you already mentioned, right? We're tokening into the gray. Talk about tokens.
Yeah. So the tokens, a lot of the cities don't upgrade past 2 holes. So there is a lot of tightness that you're doing. Now, there is a large roster of green tracks, so you can build a lot of workarounds. But then chances are you're going to start running into dits. And unless you have a goods train, you're going to have to pick up, towns along the way. So it does hurt as much as it helps, but you can usually find a way around. Even though it's tight, it's still open. Like, it feels a lot bigger than it is, because the way that you can lay the track. And even though you got totally tokened out of somewhere, chances are within 2 turns, you can probably get yourself out of that hole. They're not cheap, but there's money for them. That's the thing, right? Like, you have the cash available to buy it. So, well, what else am I going to do? I already have 2 permanent trains. Let's buy some tokens. Boink. Yeah. Let's be a jerk.
Last night, because of stations that people placed against one of my companies, I had a 10T and I was running 7 towns on it. We had 3 cities. It was a real bummer. It was a real bummer.
So Lonny, I want to know, and it's something I've kind of wanted to ask others as well. What goes into finding the right number of tokens for a game? Like, what is it just the feel of the game? How did you go about balancing that? Because to me, that's got to be tough.
Just test it and get a feeling for it.
Yeah.
I usually start with 3 tokens per company, and I will see how it looks like, and is it too crowded or is it too open? And then
the larger companies that form out of these miners, those also have a larger train roster available, correct? Like they can take an extra train earlier in the game.
All right.
What was the reason for that? Because to me, that's one of those things that I sometimes forget. Like, what's the train limit? And you're like, well, it's for this, it's this, for this, it's this, and then for these guys, it's that, because the mines are different than the majors are different than the Strassbahn companies.
It's historical because in 1835, the Prussian railway company may own one train more than the other companies. And I overtook this for 1837 and done the same for 1824. I can't tell you the reason for it. They are state railways and have to be
I mean,
more
it kind of makes,
powerful.
yeah, exactly. It makes some logical sense too, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Got one more, and this is my favorite part of 1824. And when you hear what it is, you're going to understand why I so much enjoy 1837, because 1837 has even more of this, because there's so many more companies. My favorite part about 1824 is, as these companies, these state companies are coming out, there's two things about it, right? Number one is you can buy the shares in advance. So there's some mystery sometimes about who's really going to run the company. I know that Chris has 2 shares of the SD, but if I'm making money, I can buy some SD shares and maybe I can, overtake him to some degree. But if I cannot, one of my favorite things to do is I need to figure out how to get the money and the trains off of my pre-Staatsbahn into my other company before Chris. Because the last thing I want to do is leave money on that roster, on that charter to give to him, right? And then with 1837, that even extends into the mine companies, because and stuff. And so, like, I just love that, where who's going to run this company? Because of the way that we play, we can create mystery there. And it's not 100% guaranteed who's going to run this company. And even if I can't pull it off, I need to make sure that I don't give you a lot of assets when I lose control over my little miner company. I really love that. So,
right.
Oh, so much going on in this one.
Yeah.
So let's bring us up to the feel. So Toadie's kind of getting ahead here a little bit, and he's talking about, how he feels about it. For me, this is pretty new to me. This is definitely like within the last 6 months. It's really hit my radar. So it's not one that I got to enjoy for years like Tony has. So it came on strong for me, and it's rocketing. I hesitate to do like this is my definitive top 5, because it's definitely a moving target, as not only us, but like other podcasts do that, right? Like it's constantly shifting. And this is now in there in some way, shape, or form, because it's length, like it can fit on a school night, which I really enjoy. And it can definitely, have some interesting things. I've played, the 6 times I've played, I have tried 6 different opening setups and strategies and had 6 completely different outcomes. I don't think any of them has been to win, but, hey, time is young, and I'm playing against people who love this game. So that's completely fair. So, for me, again, I love an operational game, and this game really focuses on build a great company, build some fun track for it that utilizes the best trains for that company, which, that tickles my favorite parts. That's the best way I can put it. So Tony, what are some of your feels about this one?
Yeah, 24 is definitely in my top whatever games, right? It's just so fun. I can recall my first instance of 24 back in 2016, and it was like just one of the most fun experiences I've had playing these games that I love so much. And I've been playing it for a while. I've got the first edition, I got the second edition. There's no way I'm parting with the old one. I just like this game way too much. I'm going to keep both copies, because because when I play 24, I get a fun map to build on. There's station tokens of other people that I have to contend with and work around. The goods time variant just adds to the fun of the map and strength. You can use it to strengthen other areas, or even hurt other companies by giving them an extra town. The competition for the control of the different companies, and like I said, maybe there's even some mystery there once in a while. There's a meaningful train rush without crushing the rest of the game, right? This is about getting the right trains and the right companies. Chris, you wanted the 5G, not the 8T. Sorry, wrong train and the right company. So it's about getting the right trains and the right companies on the right routes. This is just a super solid operational game with a short play time, and I love it. And I'm glad that Helmet approached you to make another version of 37, and I'm glad that you two guys produced this marvelous game, man. Thank you guys.
Blushing red. Thank you.
It's from the heart.
It doesn't go without saying that one of our friends, and what really kind of pushed it into the radar for us, me specifically, I should say, was he loves it. And I think because the same reasons, right? He definitely likes operational games, and there's just enough play in the shenanigans and the companies of running good ones. But, even if you're playing with new people, go try just trying to not own any mines and try owning all mountain railroads, or you can do so many different things. Like I think I actually took a couple notes, so I remember, like, okay, I've tried this setup, and now I'll try this one, and I like that. It's not a choice of these 5 miners and then this one comes with a share. This really, the decisions you make in that opening kit will determine your entire game. I think everybody can really be in it for a very long time. Like the few times we played this, it's been pretty tight, and I don't feel like the leaders run away with it in any way, shape, or form. I think you can catch up, which is another nice thing about this one. I'm sure that can happen with anything, but
hey, Chris, last night was proof. At one point, I was $1,000 ahead, and I ended up winning by 200.
Right.
It can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, great job. Thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to tell the audience? Anything you want to tease? Anything you're working on? You said you're being creative now. Are we expecting 1824's second cousin coming soon, or what's in the works?
No, in the works is I just ended the Kickstarter campaign for 1840, the Vienna Tramway game.
Right.
And the next game is 18 Magyarország, or in English, 18 Hungary.
Okay.
Which hopefully will start in December.
Ooh, that's exciting.
As a Kickstarter campaign.
Excellent. How are you, what's kind of going to set Hungary apart? What do you have?
Hungary, there are 13 minor companies, and they last the whole game. They don't are changed into major companies. You have 4 train types. All trains are unlimited, and you just can scrap a train before you run it and invest your money in a better train. And you have shares of 7 companies who don't operate, but who gives you just certain benefits. One company can change your train in a plus train. Another company can make you go to a mine. There are mines as well as in 1824, and so on.
Excellent. Now I'm excited. You got me excited for it already.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So normally this is where we say, Tony breaks out what is his priority deal marker. And Tony, you got the donut this time, right? I don't think you have any.
I don't have a special marker for 24. I need to come up with something that is small but represents, Austria or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but I haven't come up with anything.
May I say something? I love
Please.
the box cover because it shows a train like all the other 18x6 games, but it shows it in winter time, which is a completely new aspect and typically Austrian.
I love it. I love the box cover. It's one of my favorites for a train. Absolutely.
You're making me think of finding, the little snow globes that you shake.
Ooh, get a
But
train
something
with a
that
snow
has
globe.
Something Austrian inside of it. So, all right, I need to go to Amazon.
Yeah, we are there. Sure, there are a lot of these things here.
I like it. I think that's a good idea, Tony. I think see if you can find a little snowy village or something. That's perfect.
Yeah, something that's Austrian on the inside. I can shake it up and it can snow.
There you go.
Typical Alpine village or something.
It's much better than my suggestion of just like a tin of Vienna sausages.
They're not from Austria.
No.
We don't call them Vienna sausages. We call them Frankfurters.
Right.
Frankfurters. They call them Philadelphia sausages.
There you go. There you go. Well, this has been awesome. I look forward to that. And I wish you much success with the Vienna tramways. I think that'll be a good one as well. I'm excited for that. So it's awesome to see new stuff still coming. And I now know I need to save up for a Kickstarter this winter. Well, thank you so much, sir, for taking time out of your day to spend with us and our community and tell them a little bit about this game. I love hearing the history of these things. I have a blast.
Thank you. It was fun for me. Thank you.
No problem. And thanks for Tony for visiting and dropping in with us today so we could have our chat as always. I'm excited. I think this was a lot of fun. And if you'll listen in the podcast, you may have heard a name of somebody else who you may hear from in the near future. We shall see. That is a possibility. I'm going to leave it at that because we have nothing firm yet, but it's in there if you're looking. I'll leave it for you to speculate. So from everybody here at Wheel Tapping, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check us out. We do online streams. We have a live play of 24 up that we played. I think I got smashed in that one too. So you get to see just why I'm here for the technical end and the and my voice and everything because
and your dashing good looks.
There you go. I'll take that too. Sure. We'll take it all. So be sure to check out the channel, youtube.com. We still post everything under Game All Night. So check that out. We're going to do another one. We just did one coming up now by the time this comes out. And hey, we get together, we game on Monday, and if it's cool, we're going to stream it for you. If it's new and you haven't seen it, we're going to try and make it happen for you. So thank you so much. To all our Patreons, thank you for helping out, and we will see you next time on Wheel Tapping. Wheel Tapping is brought to you by Game Toppers. Upgrade your next experience with a great Game Topper or Matt from Game Toppers. Check them out at GameToppersLLC.com. A quick thank you to all the patrons and people who support the show by sharing it. Thank you for your support, and we appreciate everything you do to keep the show going.
Punchboard Media, where we all
bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair
At punchboardmedia.com.